Nationalism. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, thank you once again for joining me on The Real World Prepper. Quick question. Why is nationalism a bad word now? So, I looked up nationalism. I just put it in Google, right? Nationalism definition. And the Google definition, the first one that popped up, is noun, nationalism. Identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or the detriment of the interests of other nations. Ridiculous, right? Okay, so then I looked up, because look, nationalism, looking out for one nation's own interests, especially to the exclusion or the detriment of the interests of other nations. So I went back and looked at the definition of nationalism from the 50s. It's a spirit or aspiration common to the whole of a nation. Devotion and loyalty to one's own country, i.e. patriotism. The desire for national advancement of political independence. The policy or doctrine of asserting interests of one's own nation viewed as separate from the interests of other nations. Didn't say anything about to the detriment of other nations. That is what the left, liberal, socialist, media, and politicians and their agenda wants you to believe, is that to be a nationalist is to want to support your own interests to the detriment or exclusion of other nations. That is absolutely untrue. President Trump's address at the UN, his third annual address at the UN the other day, yesterday, Tuesday, exemplifies exactly what I'm talking about, the original definition, because, and I want to point out a few things that he said. First, let me add that the Google definition of it went on to have similar example words, patriotism. Okay, so first of all, if their definition is this ugly one, right, identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion and the detriment of the interests of other nations. There's also C, patriotism, patriotic sentiment, loyalism, nationality, xenophobia, chauvinism, jingoism, flag waving. Come on. Ethnocentrism and ethnocentricity. So, come on, right? President Trump, in his third annual address to the UN on Tuesday, said many things. First of all, the entire speech was one that was, a nationalist speech in a way. And again, I'm going by the original definition, not this hijacked BS definition that they want you to feel bad about being an American and feel bad about being, a patriot, someone who loves your country, who believes in, what your country's about, who believes in propping up the interests of your country. And he went on to in his speech, and I'm going to point out a couple of things, to basically say all those things, but adding all the while that every country should be doing this. He didn't do it saying, hey, we're going to do this and screw all of you and at the expense of all of y'all and to your detriment and to your exclusion. No, not at all. He went on to say that every country should be doing the same for their own country, right? So anyway, in the third annual address, he delivered a clear message in favor of nationalism and a national sovereignty and against globalism. That is what the UN is all about, is globalism. I liked the fact, if you guys didn't watch the speech, it's about 30 minutes long. It's a very subdued speech too. It's obviously, he's looking off a teleprompter and everything, but it's very subdued. He's normally blustering and very animated. He was very subdued. That's kind of one thing. It was a little boring to watch just in that regard. But if you listen to the words that he said, and assuming that he, whether or not he wrote the speech, who knows? But I'm sure it was written for him and he proofed it, I assume. But But assuming that is his stand, what he said, I encourage you to listen to the whole thing, okay? So anyway, a couple of points just to bring up. He reprised his case that all nations should exert their sovereignty, should protect their borders, and should reject any mutual and international cooperation that does not put their own country's interests first. That's not saying that America's going to do that and screw the rest of you guys. He's saying all countries should be doing the same thing that I, Donald Trump, want to do for America and for the American people, you know. And of course, you know, the media spins this thing out. If you guys probably have seen some of this stuff, but it just drives me nuts to see how they do this. And I mean, really, just, you know, you would think at some point you would just get null and void to the same old that the media is doing, but it still just, I still just get bent, man. I still watch this stuff and hear this stuff, and still I'm just flabbergasted, man. And that so many people are buying into this stuff too, feeling bad to be an American, feeling bad to be, you know, it's wrong to be patriotic, it's wrong to have sort of a nationalist view of your country and to protect your country's interests, you know. Again, not to the exclusion or the detriment of others, but just looking out for yours in the same way you look out for your own household, you know. Immigration, for one thing. How many immigrants are you willing to put up at your house, you know? I mean, you want to protect you and yours, right? The same way that Donald Trump wants to protect, or at least alleges anyway, that he wants to protect our country in the same way. If you want democracy, he says, hold on to your sovereignty. If you want peace, love your nation. Interesting that all of the people vying for the presidency on the left, all of them hate this country. They hate this country, they hate our laws, they hate what we were founded on, they want to change it all. They want to throw out the old playbook that we were founded on and bring in this new globalist, socialist BS. We all know it. I mean, this is not news to you guys, I know, okay, but you know, he went on. I like the fact that right there in front of everybody, you know, he attacked, for lack of a better word, you know, China, it's all awful trade deals, what it's doing to its own citizens, unfair trade practices. He criticized the Iranian regime for its bloodlust. You know, he did mention, you know, again, his diplomacy efforts with North Korea, although they may be a little stalled right now, and that may lead to much of nothing. But nonetheless, what other president have you known that's tried to do that? You know. He made time to mention about the censorship of Now, this particular article I'm reading, I forget where I pulled this from. It was just for some notes. I actually have about 3 different articles to try and get just for some talking points. But this one actually said, oh, President Trump even made time to complain about perceived censorship of conservative viewpoints by social media companies. Perceived? He went on to complain about the perceived notion of that? Ha! Come on, guys. There is censorship of conservative viewpoints and attacks by social justice advocates, okay? He gave a stern notice to China that the U.S. is closely watching how it handles the unrest in Hong Kong. Look into that if you don't know about what's going on there. He says that the future, Donald Trump says the future does not belong to the globalists, but it belongs to the patriots. That is you, that is me, that is us, okay? And the same, I would argue, would be clear for those of you that are watching in other countries, and I know I've got a few folks on this channel that look from other countries. That is you as well. You know, you guys that are patriotic to your country, do not give it up to the globalists. Do not. If you can help it, do not. If it's not already gone, do not. It was a clear articulation of what Trump has been arguing the past few years, which is populist nationalism is the future, and multinational one world government garbage is the past, or is going to die on the table. Please, Lord, let it die on the table. The New World Order, that's what's trying to be ushered in. That's what they're working on. You know, his argument, Trump's argument in sum total is that every country needs to look after itself, but not at the expense of other countries, you know. He hit on themes such as unfair trade, imbalanced defense spending, illegal immigration, socialism. Obviously, all of the main talking points right now that you hear him talk about and you hear the media tout as, you know, the way things ought to be, and Trump's just, you know, an old fudge that doesn't get it, you know, and an idiot, a pompous douchebag, and all these things. And look, you guys know, if you've watched my channel long enough, I'm not the biggest Trump fan, but I really liked his speech at the UN. And I really would love to see America be this America that he described and do that. The U.S., he says, is ready to embrace friendship with those who seek it. It has never believed in permanent enemies. I believe that as well, me, RWP. He says America knows that while anyone can make war, only the most courageous countries can seek peace. Like I say, he listed his complaints against China, included the massive market barriers, product dumping practices, and forced technology transfers. Even used an example of a tech company in the United States that China stole a patent and then basically put in place through that patent law that this company couldn't sell in China, which they had been. It essentially bankrupted this company. I forget their name. This has to do with the WTO, the World Trade Organization, which he says he complained, railed against them for failing to compel China to liberalize its economy and call for drastic change to that international trade system. You know, China is the second largest economy in the world, and Trump talked about this, and they should not allow to declare itself a developing country at the expense of others. This is exactly what Google says nationalism is, right? The detriment of other countries while propelling your own. Like I say, I just want to touch on a couple of topics. He used Venezuela example as the nightmare of socialism, and to blast socialism. He says that open border activists are cruel and evil in their policies. You know, one of his favorite topics, of course, illegal immigration. It's a huge problem in this country, as you all know. He suggested that the U.S. will not tolerate illegal immigration and said that those who promote open border policies are only promoting the smuggling of abuses of human rights. Largely true, okay? Donald Trump insisted that those who promote the open border policies are only promoting cruel and evil policies cloaked in the guise of social justice. Yes! If you don't see it, you're not watching. You're not opening your eyes. You're not looking. You know, he says as long as he's president, he will enforce the laws on the books and protect the borders. Anyone who enters illegally will not be allowed to stay. Why is that wrong? It shouldn't be. He emphasizes a nationalist approach to trade and defense, of course. Blast globalists. Like I say, the future belongs to the patriots. So it's just a few points. I want you to look at that if you didn't already. If you haven't seen it already, go check out his speech. Again, it's a little subdued, so it's not the bombastic Trump that you're used to seeing. However, listen to the words of the speech. Very good, in my opinion. It gave me a good feeling, you know, about his re-election possibilities, which I hope he is. You guys need to be preparing. This is a prepper channel, so we have to look at everything that's going on in our country. We need to look in our backyard, you know, in our city, in our state, excuse me, our country, the world, how it all works together, because preparing is what we need to be doing, because this house of cards will fall. It's either going to fall for us here in America, it's going to fall as soon as one of these liberal, socialist, America-hating Democrats gets into office, or some red herring Republican, which will probably be a big trick if Donald Trump is successful in 2020, which I pray that he is. Because in my opinion, we've got either one more year or we've got 5 more years to get your stuff together, to get to a point to where you can sustain yourself as best as possible without any outside help, You know, the gun confiscation stuff is not going to happen from kicking in doors. They're going to turn off your credit cards. They're going to turn off your bank accounts. They're going to cancel your or turn off your driver's license. You know, you're not going to be. It's going to be facial recognition. You walk into a store, they're going to pick you up. That's how it's going to happen. When you don't turn it in, when you don't voluntarily turn them in, that's how they're going to do it. That's how they're going to starve you out. So that's why, you know, and keep you from functioning in the society that they're building. That is this globalist, one world government state, you know, that is Orwellian. You all know what I'm saying. So prepare now. Do all you can. We've got 1 to 5 years, I believe, to get all this together, to get yourself together where you can hopefully sustain yourself and be as unplugged from the world as you possibly can, because that's what we're coming to. Listen, thanks so much. A little hope today, you know, I hope, for you guys. So check it out if you hadn't already, the Donald Trump's UN address from yesterday. And thank you for joining me here on The Real World Prepper. I do have a video coming up very soon that will talk about SHTF planning and preparation while traveling, i.e. on vacation, okay? So important stuff, I believe, and hopefully we'll cover that soon. Thanks again, Real World Prepper, outski.